All right, traders, good afternoon. This is Christian Farmer, it's Trade Trade Group, and this is your end of day market recap. Fix my headset there for Monday, August 18th. And I am back in the office today. I was traveling for a few days, got some vacation in, quick vacation, but very nice to be back in the office and going over the markets a little bit more in detail. I will say this: while I was away on vacation, it was pretty. I was surprised with all the events that we had. A lot of macro events last week, and all concluding, and all seemed to be, kind of going in the right direction for the market. I was a bit surprised at how dovish Powell was. He had ample opportunity to, after the initial statement that was given on Wednesday at 2 o'clock, he had ample time in the press conference to kind of walk back with some of the questions that he got, but he didn't want to do that. And, it's kind of been a little bit interesting since then. Some of those Fed speakers have come out and tried to walk back some of those dovish comments about rate cuts and, but the market really hasn't adjusted to that. And we continue to be in a strong seasonal period. And that's also why sometimes the market is just overlooking some of those things. It's just a little bit more optimistic in the month of November and December. And that's what we're experiencing right now. Now, eventually that will change. But for now, if you're trend following a bit and if you're going with the momentum, there seems to be plenty of opportunities. Now, before I get into some of today's movers, risk disclaimer in front of you, everything that we're going through is for information purposes only. Please read that as well. And also just looking at the indices kind of just quickly a bit here. This one thing that I note at this point, and the follow through that we had after the Fed meeting last week, is that the indices are a little bit overbought. I call them cooked. When you get the RSI as where we are right now, and again, you can look at this right now. I'm just looking at S&P futures right now. It is a 79 RSI. Reminder, anything above 70 is overbought. Now, it's a little bit different with the indices, or at least I view when the indices get overbought is different when stocks get overbought. Stocks can stay overbought for a long time. They could stay overbought for weeks, even longer than that. And that's very bullish to see when stocks, get overbought. For example, take a look at CrowdStrike, right? That's been overbought now for the better part. It's been over RSI 70 for now the better part, or more than a month at this point. By the way, my target in CrowdStrike, which I'm still long, is 265. 60 probably will be 265 if it can get there. It's been moving up in a straight line. So again, I'll reiterate that really quickly because there's a big difference. You want a single stock to get overbought. I see a lot of beginner traders or amateur traders. They will, when they see a stock get overbought, they're like, oh my God, it's a 75 or 80 RSI. I'm fading that. Right? It's one of the worst things that you could do. Right. And that's why we don't use the RSI study like that. We kind of use it we'll use it in conjunction of other things. Like I don't really want to buy a stock when it's severely overbought, but I'm certainly not fading one. Now, again, moving back to the indices, those are in overbought territory. And if you look, usually we don't stay there for very long without at least some backing and filling. Again, it doesn't necessarily mean that I want to go and fade the indices. It just means that we're getting kind of cooked. So 79 is the RSI. Now, also keep in mind, we're prices above the 5-period moving average. It's a little bit extended here, right? But there's no sell signal, right? Same thing with the Qs. The RSI for this is right now a 77, right? So that's pretty overbought as well. You could see there's no sell signal here in my opinion. We're above the 5-period moving average, right? That's usually where I begin to, once we're trading above the value area for the month like this, that's where I kind of rely on the moving averages a bit to tell me whether or not we're losing momentum or not. And for now, even though there was a little bit of end of day selling, we're continuing to grind higher, right? IWM is a little bit of a different animal. It's been that way all year long. And that's a 74 RSI. Really didn't do too much today. Continuing to kind of consolidate some of those gains after that big move last week, and it looks like Thursday we had a gap higher and kind of just sitting above there. And then a reminder, don't forget where we are on the weekly chart, which I think is the most important. For the small caps is above 195.87. We're hanging above there. I mean, it's the beginning of the week. We don't know how that weekly bar is going to take shape, but it's had a lot of difficulties with this 195 to 197 level, and you can see that in the beginning of the year, right on the top of the value areas. Remember, the value areas that we're looking at for the weekly chart, this covers all of last year's price and volume activity, or I shouldn't say all, but it's basically one standard deviation of last year's volume and price activity. And that's why it becomes so important, because I do believe that there are statistics in trading. Notice what we did here on the bottom of value. We held it, but again, it's very sticky up here once we get to that 195.87 level. So there's the indices. So again, before I go into some single stocks and talk about what I'm doing or what I'm trading, it's important to kind of just know where we are right now. So this is what I said pre-market too, even though the Qs continue to higher, is that I'm okay with a little bit of just going sideways and maybe letting this 20-day moving average catch up, right? Sometimes if you've been doing this for a while, you don't mind a little bit of that pushback, but that's not what we had today. And I think when we look at the great 8 names, they really stole the show today. Really strong performance. Amazon was up 2.7%. Google was up 2.4%. Meta was up 2.9%. Netflix, NVIDIA, they were all up over 2%. Tesla, Apple, not so much. Just a shame with this. Tesla has been kind of it is what it is. And I don't think I mean to shock anybody with this, but it's been underperforming now for some time. And it just has not followed the rest of the market higher. Now, it is still holding above this 249 level, and this VPOC is giving it a little bit of trouble here as it try to go higher. So as long as, if you're in a Tesla trade, I would say as long as it stays above 249. But again, there's so many better things going on, which takes us to Amazon. Amazon. So first of all, I want to look at the weekly chart in Amazon. Notice that it has broken above the value area. That's something that it's kind of had some difficulty with now. So that's good, right? And again, we look at multiple time frames because they show us a little bit of a different picture based on volume at price. So what I did today was, and I try to stress these points, as much as possible, but you could use options for various different things. The one way I sometimes use options is, if a stock is going sideways and there's no signal, right, yet to go long, what I generally do is I sometimes leg into some options so that if we do get a big move, right, you can capitalize on that. And then, and also with options, the most that you could lose is the premium, right? With the stock trade, obviously it's a bit different, but, depending on how you structure your trades, for example, like if you get into a option trade for $1 or $1.50, that's the most that you can lose. That's it. With stock, it's a bit different. So that's one way. And then, of course, the other thing that I don't think many traders do is you could leg into your option. You can get that first move, right? And then you can kind of begin, notice that we're at this virgin point of control, which could be where we see some digestion. And if we do see some digestion, remember with options, the clock is always running, right? Meaning the theta decay is always running on your position. So I would rather at this point, and you could kind of see what I did here, but I took off my Amazon trade that I got into before I left for vacation, right? And I took this off for about 45% profit, which is nice for a week, because Amazon really, didn't go, the FANG stocks and the great 8 weren't the big movers last week. They did fine, but they were not the big movers. That was the small caps, right? And things like that. But what I did was I substituted out of this, right? $14 out of 970. And then just as I mentioned, I said I would put on an option position, and I may switch to stock. So I'm now in that stock, and I will be in this as long as price can basically stay above the value area, right? So remember, inside of value area means we're in a range, right? And once we break out, now we're doing something special, right? Now we're in some price discovery, right? So we will have to get past that virgin point of control. We may get hung up there for a little bit, wouldn't surprise me, but overall that's a nice breakout and looks pretty good on the weekly chart. We'll do Microsoft next. This is a great one to watch. I'm in this in my TTG trend portfolio, but not in my trading account. But this one is a great one to watch. It's starting to the price action is starting to get pretty tight. Right, doesn't mean it moves this week, but maybe it's next week, right? The more that this consolidates, after a big move, I think the better. And I would watch 374 for this one, right? Right now it's trading inside its value area for this week. 374 will be a nice level to watch, right? And then it will have to get past this overhead supply, a little bit of overhead supply. It's fresh, it's not that old. And then, maybe you see new highs in Microsoft, but I like this chart a lot. Meta also had a really nice move. That did break the value area, so that's been a nice move from the bottom of value to the top. 341.62. If you're in Meta or thinking about getting long Meta here, watch that level. That's a level that you can be long against, and of course, if it does not break in there, then you can change your mind and get out of the trade, considering the breakout will be neutralized. All right, and then just a couple other ones in this group. NVIDIA made its way all the way to the top of value. Finally something out of NVIDIA. Not this year, right? When I talk about when the stocks, and sometimes I complain about them over the last month or two, that's basically it for NVIDIA, right? I have a short-term memory. I don't. Of course, I made a lot of money in NVIDIA earlier in this year, but for the last few months, it's been sideways as hell, right? So watch 503.66. So again, I know NVIDIA is up a lot this year. It's been a huge outperformer, but since the last few months, right, everything else has gone up. When you look at the market, right, the market has done this, right? NVIDIA has kind of gone sideways. And then SMCI, which has been another one that's been really dormant, right? And that one finally broke its value area. So again, this could be the start of a move here and in SMCI. So it took out some short-term things here. Right, I'm gonna bring up the right, 2 virgin point of control. So again, trying to conquer this overhead supply a little bit, and we could stay above, call it like 320, right? You've got a nice chance for possibly new highs, right? Notice it's also in the middle of trying to fill this this gap here, but I like this move, right? And finally, and again, you look at the stock and it's up 7%, but you think, oh geez, I missed it, right? Well, it could be just the start of a move, right? Go back to what Broadcom did last week, right? Broadcom, you may have saw the very first move, this green bar, been like, oh, I missed it, right? I get it. People do that all the time. I do that too. But that was when the stock was at 1020. It's up another $130 since then, right? And it's still not finished going up. So don't be discouraged if you miss like the first green bar, right? And again, you don't have to go in with a full size position. You can kind of scale in a little bit, right? That's one of the best things that I have learned to do, is just say, instead of throwing in the towel and saying, hey, I missed it, right? You go in with a smaller position. If a stock is going to do this, right? If it's going to do something special and break to new highs, right? Maybe 360, 380, 394, then, it's going to work with a small position too, right? So if you get scared because you're like, oh, I can't chase a name up 7%, have some perspective, as it may just be the beginning of the move. Now, of course, you always want to know you're out, right? And for me, like I already mentioned, the 320 level if you're super short term, but I would also watch this 300 level, because again, as long as it stays above here, right? And notice that it really wasn't able to do that last month. It didn't actually get out of its value area at all. And really, besides this quick move, it really hasn't been able to be outside its value area since all the way since the beginning of August. I was going to mention a couple other things here too, right? I'd like to look at some other names. CCJ, right, had a little bit of difficulty last week, but I think that this group is going to stay strong. If I had to make a little bit of a prediction, this NXE is another name. Didn't close on new highs, but this is like I call this the CCJ Junior, right? Or so this has been a strong name too in uranium in that group. I just wanted to point out XLC, which is the communications ETF. Remember, a big portion of this is Google and Meta. This also came out to new highs, so pretty impressive new highs for the year. Right, not new all-time highs. So again, this still could have a ways to go, right? So that's why I zoom out here a little bit, just to kind of put those things in perspective. A couple other names that I was going to go over. Here's our, I put together a watch list every weekend, right? Here's how our watch list is doing so far. We did have SMCI on there, a couple other names, ESTC. I did start a position in this one. This one I've been kind of itching to get involved in. Again, it had a little difficulty with this 5-period moving average, but if it can stay above, and that's where I go to the 1-hour chart, right, just kind of broke into that value area. If it can stay above 113, right, it looks fairly decent here as starting to kind of regroup a little bit after a little bit of sideways price action. Another one too that's I think is pretty has been a pretty volatile name is this SYM. Right. This did break above its value area, right? Had this big move, also came in and tested the 20-day moving average. A little bit of a whippy price action, but resolved very nicely here. And 54.82 is the level to watch there. Last one I'll talk about in tonight's video is Kava. Right. Notice what Kava did today. Right. So nice breakout of the value area. Again, this is where the value area is really come into play to kind of help out a little bit. And that came right up to the virgin point of control here and stalled, right? Again, why is that? Because it's overhead supply. So if you're looking at a Kava trade at this point, because again, it's a nice breakout of the value area, I would pay attention to that 42.92 level. Other than that, breadth was not super strong. You could see that there was a lot more names that were down, or sold off throughout the session. Metals and mining gave back. I came into today long metals and mining, right? Notice what I did. I just kind of took the gift, right? This was up on the US Steel. I didn't really get why all the names were moving in sympathy, like an STLD was up 2%, a Nucor was up, and various other names in that space. So I took my profits and I got out of this trade. I kind of pieced out of it little by little. And, here's my last piece that I took off, but you could see this is not the best looking candle. It still finished up 1.6% for the day, but and I got out of RS, which was another one. I hit one target in this, right around the open. Right, this is a trade that I entered into last week. Even while I was away on vacation, I did try to kind of play a little bit of some of those rotations. I thought that the metals and mining really could get going, and I did. I took my profits in STLD actually on Friday. And it hit this virgin point of control. Again, look at the magnetism here, right? Try to break higher and right back into this. So I was out of that trade. You could see on Friday, 123 versus 115. So happy to be out of that. As mentioned, and I took, again, right now I'm in the kind of profit taking mode, right? I don't mind adding a new piece of a trade here and there, as long as I'm net selling with the indices oversold. So that's it for today's recap. That's good for Monday. Guys, have a great night. I'll see you tomorrow.